Good morning. Welcome to Whitmix's webinar, Expanding Your Offering with Clear Aligner Studio, this morning with Bryce Hiller. My name is Bernie Jaroslaw. I'm the marketing manager at Whitmix, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. So I'd like to begin with a few housekeeping items. First, in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you should see a questions box. Feel free to type in any questions you have throughout the presentation, and then Bryce will answer the questions at the end of the webinar, not during, but at the end. Next, if you are CDT, this webinar is approved for 1 hour of CE credit toward your recertification. And how that happens is within about a day to 2 days, we'll send you a notification by email. It'll tell you exactly how to obtain your credit. And I'll give you a little hint. It involves a relatively simple test, but that requires you to pay a little bit of attention to this, so please do. Lastly, the webinar is being recorded, so within about 48 hours or so, it'll be up on the Whitmix website in the webinar section. So this morning, I have the pleasure of introducing Bryce Hiller. Bryce has an associate's degree in information sciences from Indiana Wesleyan University, and he received his lab experience in his family lab, where he was instrumental in transitioning the lab from analog to digital. He's a digital support specialist at Whitmix in 3Shape design, 3D printing, and also in milling. Bryce has a passion for empowering dental professionals through education in digital technology. So today, Bryce will be speaking on clear aligners and how they can impact your lab's business in a big way. So that's all I've got. So Bryce, if you're ready, let's talk about clear aligners.
Awesome. Thanks, Bernie. Hi, everyone. Hope your Tuesday is productive and enjoyable. So today I want to go over pretty much the foundational, the fundamentals of Clear Aligner Studio in 3Shape. There are some pretty advanced features that I'll mention, some of which are somewhat out of the scope for today's little demonstration. However, before we actually dive into the software, I do just want to go over a couple bits of information regarding what you actually need for Clear Aligner Studio and what it can do for you. So like Bernie said, we're going to be talking about expanding your either your lab or your practice's offerings with Clear Aligner Studio. So the first question you might be asking is, why clear aligners? I'm sure you've all seen the Facebook ads of various home kits. Everybody obviously is already familiar with Invisalign. That's kind of like the big brand name. The biggest thing is your bottom line. Clear aligners can be highly profitable for both labs and clinics. By doing these in-house, you can offer patients a very good product, basically the same thing as Invisalign, at a much better price. So Invisalign, the average cost is actually $3,500 to $8,500. That's a big range, but there's a lot of factors that play into that price, such as how many teeth are being moved. Is it both arches, or is it just the maxillary? So there's a large range there. But up to $8,500 is a lot of money. So in your lab or your practice, you can offer basically that product for a much better price than what those patients might be paying by going somewhere that's actually doing the Invisalign branded clear aligner. The next thing is there's a big marketing advantage for both labs and clinics by being able to offer a wide range of products to your patients in the same clinic or laboratory. So everybody loves Amazon.com, right? Because guess what? You can go there and you can pretty much buy anything known to man for the most part and have it on at your doorstep in 2 days. That is a huge marketing advantage, and I think that applies to laboratories and clinics as well. I think as a laboratory, by being able to offer your doctors such a wide range of products, you're increasing the appeal of that doctor wanting to send you work. Same thing if you're a doctor. If your office is able to offer a wide range of services to your patients, you know, it's going to entice patients to come to you. And especially clear aligners can be a really easy kind of add-on service that you can offer them, that probably a lot of people are interested in, but maybe don't want to go through all the hassles of one of the home kits, or aren't aware of how affordable it can be by partnering with a laboratory that does them in-house, or a doctor that does them in-house. The popularity is skyrocketing with clear aligners. I think this is in large part due to better digital technology that is allowing more laboratories to produce these. In 2018, the market size was 1.8 billion, and that is expected to grow to 5.8 billion by 2025. That's a huge growth. So we are still kind of in the upward swing of this growth pattern. So by entering now into this market, I think there's a lot of opportunity for labs and clinics to increase basically their bottom line and provide a good product for their patient at the same time. Moving on, let's get into some of the software requirements. So fortunately, you can actually purchase Clear Aligner Studio as an add-on module to either ortho system or dental system. This is a huge convenience for dental labs that aren't necessarily ortho labs as well, but want to kind of transition into doing clear aligners. You can actually add this onto your dental system, which is a huge advantage. Obviously, you will need to purchase the Clear Aligner Studio. That is the standalone module that you do have to purchase in addition to your software package. And then finally, a scanner, a desktop scanner. This is actually optional. So if you are, for example, a doctor with a Trio scanner or an intraoral scanner, or a laboratory that has an account with an intraoral scanner, you don't need a desktop scanner. So that's why this is optional. So now I actually want to get into the software a little bit. So let's dive in. Downsize some things here. Okay. Also, I've got a little questions box here. If you guys have any questions at any point, feel free to type them in. I'll answer them as I can. If I can see them, I'm going to kind of keep this little screen down in my corner here. So the screen we're looking at right now, this is kind of the main setup screen for your clear aligner. But we actually want to start on the main ortho analyzer screen. So if you're not familiar with ortho analyzer, that's okay. Some of that, like the order form and everything, is a bit outside our scope today. I really want to show you the actual clear aligner workflow. But for those who aren't familiar, this is your ortho analyzer. This is where you can perform various functions for your ortho models. So here we have an intraoral scan, and we have gone ahead and prepared this model set. To actually initiate the clear aligner workflow, we are going to click this clear aligner button down here. However, before we do that, I do want to point out one of the really cool features of Ortho System and Clear Aligner Studio. So up here in our input options, we do have the option to import a DICOM scan. So if you have a cone beam scan that was taken for this particular patient, you can actually import that and use that in your your aligner workflow, which is highly advantageous. Again, it's a little bit outside of our scope today. That's more of an advanced feature, but I do want to point out that that option is available and it's highly advantageous. So to actually enter the clear aligner workflow, we're going to click the clear aligner option here. And then if you're already using 3Shape, you're pretty familiar with how the software kind of works. Up here we have our various steps, and then on the left-hand side of the screen will be our sub-steps. So we're going to start at the beginning. The first option here is to set your occlusal plane. We do this the same way we do it in dental system or ortho system. We select 3 points to set the occlusal plane, and then I'm going to select next. Once we do that, it will automatically provide us with our sagittal plane and our occlusal plane. You can move that around if you want by just clicking and dragging the point here. Once we have that set, I'm going to click next. So this next phase is our segmentation. So basically what we're doing in this phase is we're telling the software where each of our teeth are, because we can't move the teeth unless the software knows exactly where they are. So down here you can see we only have 2 molars. We don't have third molars. So what you want to do is you want to tell the software that these teeth are missing. To do that, you simply right click, and there will be an option an option that says missing that allows you to eliminate that tooth from your arch. I've already done so just to kind of breeze through the loading screens to make this a little more smooth for you. Now to actually set these points, what you want to do is you want to click the most distal point of each tooth and the most mesial point of each tooth, all the way around your arch. You can modify those points after the fact by clicking and dragging, but by setting these properly, it's going to make your life a lot easier in the next phase when we're actually editing the cutout spline around each tooth, because it will automatically detect those spline lines a lot better. You do also have the option to change your tooth axis. So this is where the DICOM scans really come into play, because you can actually change this rotational axis to more accurately match where your roots are. Very, very advantageous. See, we do have a question here. Do you have a suggestion as to where you put your occlusal points? If you are referring to for the occlusal plane, some people will choose on their first molars the mesial cusp tip, the incisal edge, mesial cusp tip. Some people will choose on their first molar the central fossa, incisal edge, central fossa. It's kind of up to you. Fortunately, if those points aren't exactly where you want them, you can always just click and drag, just like in dental system. You can click and drag that occlusal plane and put it wherever you want. So once we have segmented these where we want them to be, I'm going to click next. And this is the phase where it's actually going to automatically, it's going to attempt to automatically define these cutout lines. If you set these points properly, it usually does a really good job. So you can see that those all look pretty darn good. If for some reason you do need to edit one, let's say our number 8 up here is a little bit off, we want to change it. To do that, I'm going to just go over here to our tooth overview. I'm going to click number 8, and then I can modify these points, and I can click and drag them wherever I want them to be. There is also the option to, if for some reason one of the splines is just way off, not even close, you can click the segment tooth manually, and then you can just manually draw that line all the way around. There is also a fast edit option. which again, if you are using Dental System, you're already familiar with, but that allows me to simply kind of draw that line, click and drag and draw that line exactly where I want it. Once we have all of these spline lines set correctly, I'm going to click Next. One thing that I want to mention about the segmentation that isn't necessarily apparent at first, you don't actually have to segment all of your teeth. And this can actually be really handy if you're, for example, if you're only wanting to move your social 6, but you want your posteriors to remain locked in place, you don't want them to be able to move at all, you actually just you can actually just mark these as missing and then only segment your anteriors. That will prevent any of your posteriors from moving and will allow you to change movements for just the teeth that you actually want to move. So now we are in a sculpting phase. This should be familiar for most of you that are using 3Shape. We can use this to, we can remove artifacts, we can sculpt, we can morph. In this case, there's not a whole lot I need to do to this. I don't really see any particularly large artifacts that I need to remove. For those of you that want to see how it works, that's cool. Let's do that. So I'm going to select the remove artifacts, and then I can change the size of the line that I'm about to draw by using this slider bar. So let's say that we just want to, let's pretend that's an artifact. Or actually, let's select this right here. So I'm actually going to maybe, oh, oops, we need to select tooth. And I'm actually going to kind of just draw this circle around that artifact. I'm going to hit the play button and it's going to wipe it out. It's pretty handy if you've got like poles in an impression or something like that. It can be pretty useful to use this remove artifacts tool. So the next phase, again, allows us to change our rotational center. So again, this is where those DICOM files can really come in handy because being able to see those roots plays a huge factor a lot of times when you're moving teeth. It's very advantageous. So now we're actually just going to go through on the lower. We're just going to do all the same steps as we just did on the upper. I've already done them, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of click next through all of these. Okay, so now we are in the ideal arch phase. So what this allows us to do is kind of create a visual ideal arch. This is purely visual. This doesn't restrict your tooth movements at all. It really just provides you with kind of a visual guide when you're moving these teeth, because if you don't have this, once you start moving them, it's kind of easy to lose track of where that ideal arch is because you've started moving these all over the place. You know, things don't look the same as when they did when you started, and you kind of lose that kind of imaginary visual guide. So this kind of gives you a concrete visual guide that you can use. But again, this does not lock any of your tooth movements. It doesn't prevent you from moving these in any direction. It's simply a visual guide. To actually set that visual guide, you simply click each point around your arch, and then you can come back and you can actually edit that arch. Oops. Same thing on the lower. So now at this point, we've kind of gotten all the menial legwork out of the way, if you will. This is our main screen for actually performing our tooth movements. Over here, there are some various options that we'll go over after we actually go through and finish our tooth movements. Down here are our tooth movement tools. So the first one, these are our global movements. So this is what actually allows us to pick up our teeth and move them around. Might be giving me problems since I've already done it. There we go. So I'm just going to start fresh with the new one. So by using the movement tool right here, you can select your tooth. And you can actually click and drag it. You can rotate it. And you can also change your angulation and inclination. So these tools, if you're using 3Shape, or this tool in particular, you're going to be pretty familiar with from Crown and Bridge or removables, etc. So we can move these. So one thing that I do want to mention are some of the options in the control panel. These will be more apparent to you once you actually start doing it. But in the control panel, there's one option that you can use, and it's your tooth movement restraints. So what that does, it allows you in control panel to actually set overall tooth movement constraints, meaning it will limit how much you can actually move each tooth. It will limit the actual movement. It can limit the angulation, the inclination, and the rotation. You can actually custom set all those parameters in case you only want to move each tooth so much, and you can actually customize it per tooth. So if you want to be able to move centrals a lot more than you want to be able to move premolars, you can set all that up, and you can have as many custom tooth movement constraints as you want. So some of the other tools here, there is a tooth extraction tool. To use that, I'm just going to click a tooth. I'm going to click extract, and it will automatically extract that tooth based on the spline line that we drew around it in the previous step. If you want to undo the extraction, I'm just going to select this tooth, click undo, and it will just pop it right back into place. Also, there is a tooth stripping tool here as well. So let's go ahead and let's just select our premolar here. There's a couple different ways that you can do this. There is an automatic stripping tool, which you can set how much you want to automatically apply. So if I set that to 100 microns, I click our apply button, it will automatically strip that tooth by 100 microns. If I do automatic, oops. It will automatically apply that stripping based on the adjacent teeth. However, that was awfully extreme. There is also manual stripping down here, which is kind of cool. If you click the use saw mode and then you set your tool width, you can actually draw the line yourself, and you can actually perform the tooth stripping wherever you want it to be. So what I clicked was the show tool, which actually shows me that little dot around my cursor, and then the use saw mode is what allows me to draw a straight line. If I turn off the use saw mode, I can draw a just a curvy regular line. It doesn't have to be a straight line. So this can be a really helpful tool if your teeth are super crowded. But again, that's something that you'll want to, if you're a laboratory, you'll need to talk to your doctor about. So let's move on to the attachments tool. So you can apply attachments in Clear Aligner Studio. You can actually, in like a third-party CAD software, you can actually design your own attachments and import those if there are particular ones that you want to use. Let's just pick a box attachment for right now. Let's go ahead and place this box attachment. So what you can do, you can scale these, and you can also rotate them. And you can place these attachments wherever you want, completely customizable. You can also change your orientation, which will change how it kind of appears on the surface where you're wanting to actually apply it. Now, one really cool feature of Clear Aligner Studio that is really awesome is automatic placement. So when you're in Control Panel, there is actually an automatic placement customization option in your attachment settings. What that allows you to do is you can actually tell the software by clicking this button, you can actually tell the software to evaluate how much you've moved these teeth and automatically place attachments based on criteria that you set. So for example, if you want the software to analyze all of the movements that you've conducted and then automatically place an attachment on any tooth that is greater than, that has an angulation movement of greater than 1 degree, then you can click this button. It will automatically place an attachment of your choosing on the surface of this tooth based on those criteria. So it will automatically analyze these movements, analyze your constraints, and then automatically place these attachments based on those constraints. It can really help you save a lot of time by trying to analyze which teeth you think are going to need these attachments based on how much you move them. Can be a huge time saver. We're not really going to get into the control panel today, simply because we could spend 2 hours just going over the control panel. But I did want to mention that automatic placement because it is kind of a huge deal in cutting how much time you actually have to spend placing these attachments. So moving on, we do have some other options over here. We have a distance map, which if we click show, it will show us a distance map in regards to our opposing dentition. We have also a measurement tool, which allows you to measure various points. Let's get rid of the, let's clear that. You can also use the measurement tool on this side of your screen as well, which will measure the distance between 2 points. Okay, so the last tool that I want to go over is the soft tissue editing. So you can define a custom gingiva flexible area, and you can do that by simply clicking and dragging if you want to edit that area. The software will kind of draw, it will kind of get it in the correct ballpark area of where that flexible tissue area is going to be. Let's go back to movements. Over here on the right side of the screen, I do want to show you guys some of the different like slider bar functions. So obviously this is going to be to show or hide your arches. This will show or hide your teeth. The next one will show and hide your tissue. Now here's where some of the cool ones are. Well, this will show your selected tooth or hide it. Now this one will show your original tooth positions, which is kind of neat. It will kind of give you a ghosted out shadow of where those original teeth were. Just kind of can help give you kind of a visual guide as to where and how much you've moved those teeth. There is also a mirroring tool. So if you turn this on, the software will give you a mirrored view of the tooth that you have selected. So it can help you get those teeth placed more symmetrically. The next one, you can actually put a marker on all the teeth that you've moved. So if it has a green dot, it means we've moved it or modified it somehow. A gray dot means that tooth has not moved or been modified. So I'm going to go back to my original setup here. Okay, so I've already subdivided this, but we're gonna go through how to do that. It is literally two to three clicks. It's pretty awesome. I do want to go over some of these tools up here. The biggest one being a new setup. If you decide for some reason that you don't like your setup, you want to start over from scratch, you can click that and you can completely start fresh, which is what I did when we first started moving those teeth around. The other option is you can copy a setup. This can be pretty helpful if let's say you get you go through with your entire setup and your sub setups. You print all your models, you do your suck downs, and you make your aligners. Let's say you get to sub setup 4, and you or if you're the doctor or if you're the lab, your doctor decides, I don't like how a certain tooth is moving, or I want to move this tooth less because I feel like we're putting too much stress on it. You can actually make a copy and then create a new setup, branching off from whatever sub setup you want to branch from. It can be really helpful because you don't have to start all over by taking new impressions or anything like that. You can actually just branch off of one of your sub setups and proceed forward that way. It's very, very useful. You can also, if you want to insert new substeps, you can do that. And if you want to delete your setup, you can delete your setup. Now, the big feature here that we need to go over is how to actually subdivide your final setup, right? So to do that, I'm going to click Subdivide Setup. And there are 3 different ways that we can subdivide these. Now, this is critical. This is critical for your treatment planning. So the 3 different ways. The first one is sub setups count. So what this is going to do is you're going to enter a number here, and it's going to create 10 substeps, or however many substeps you create, you enter in here. And over here, it's going to show you how much the maximum rotation and the maximum translation of any tooth based on this number. So this can be a little dicey if you're not paying attention to these numbers, because as we all know, if you move a tooth too much, you can kill it. So we definitely don't want that. So I only recommend doing this if you're only moving teeth a very small amount, or if you're really paying attention to these numbers over here on this side of your screen. The next option is to actually indicate to the software manually how much you want those teeth to be able to move per aligner. So if I increase the maximum rotation per aligner, it's going to reduce our substeps, because those teeth are able to move much more per aligner. Same with translation. So you can see there's a big jump here from translation of 0.1 to 0.2. That reduces our sub setups by 10, which translates to 10 fewer aligners for the patient. But again, if you're going to use this, you do still want to pay attention to these numbers over here. In theory, they should never exceed these, but we are dealing with software, and it would behoove you to just pay attention to these numbers at all times. Now, the one that I really like is the third one right here. So this will automatically divide your setup into sub-setups based on your what are called per aligner constraints. So these are constraints that are set in your control panel. They are similar to your tooth movement constraints. However, the difference being tooth movement constraints will constrain your overall tooth movements, regardless of how many sub setups you have. Whereas per aligner constraints will restrict how much each tooth can move per individual aligner. And what's nice about this feature is if you have several doctors that have several per aligner constraint preferences, you can actually set these up per doctor. You can go into control panel, you can set up a set of parameters for your per aligner constraints, and then you can name it Dr. Joe or Dr. Smith or Dr. Bob. And then in here, in your per aligner constraints, you can select, oh, this one's for Dr. Bob. I know he only wants to be able to move teeth X amount per constraint. I'm going to select Dr. Bob, and then it's going to give you your sub setups based on Dr. Bob's preferences. This is the one I like using the most, and this is the one I usually, especially for people who are just getting into clear aligners, this is the one I recommend using because it will absolutely prohibit you from moving teeth more than what you have determined is acceptable in your control panel. So let's go ahead and I've actually already subdivided these, so I'm not going to click OK because I don't need two setups in here. But once you click OK, it will take just a few seconds to subdivide these, and then it will load them, as you can see here, underneath of your original model. So you can scroll through all of these by just double clicking on each of these. So right now, here's our original. And then sub setup 9 is our 9th setup. And then at the very top, we have our final. So now what you can also do is you can actually generate an animation. It's just basically like a GIF image, and it will populate into the case folder. And it's kind of nice because it can kind of give you like a visual aid for seeing where you've moved those teeth. One other option that is really convenient when you're kind of planning out how many of these sub setups you want is this option right here. So this is your setup and staging timeline. This is a super powerful tool that can really help you to hone in exactly how you want to move these teeth and how much. So what this actually does is, over here we have all of our teeth. Anything that's green are teeth that are being moved or modified in any way. So right now, being green, it's showing any tooth that's been rotated or translated. And what you can actually do is you can modify this to kind of change based on what aligner you're on. So down here are our various subsetups, starting with the original all the way down to our final. Let's say on tooth number 11, for some reason we decide, you know, I want to hold off on performing any movements on that until our second or our third subsetup. You can actually drag this timeline over, and that tooth will not move until the third setup. Now that is going to result in a larger movement per aligner, because this tooth is moving in a fewer amount of subsetups. So that is one thing that you do need to pay attention to before you do your subdivision. The other nice visual aid here are your waypoints. This is basically, it's kind of the same thing, but it's a little more in depth. So if we select our tooth here, we can really kind of refine those movements. So right now, again, we have combined selected. So this is basically an aggregate of our rotations and translations combined. So let's say I want to reduce those movements, but not completely eliminate them in these first two aligners. I can actually use these waypoints, and I can kind of just give this particular tooth a little bit less movement, let's say for the first few aligners, and then if I really want to crank it up on aligner 5, I want to start moving that tooth a lot. You know, you can see here between 4 and 5, we've got a lot more movement. So this is a really powerful tool that you can use once you've kind of gotten a little accustomed to the software. That can really allow you to refine and hone in on those tooth movements. There might be, there could be a million different reasons why you would want to utilize this. But you can also actually, let's say we don't want to change the movements, but we actually want to change our stripping. So we can actually set that here. We can set when we want that stripping to actually take effect. It's not letting me click and drag those, probably because I've already exported them. If you haven't already exported them, it will allow you to simply click and drag these. And then also attachments. You can do the same thing with your attachments. We haven't placed any attachments, so there's nothing showing up. But again, if you want to change when those attachments are actually placed, you can do that here in your timeline and waypoints as well. It's a very, very handy tool. So now let's go ahead and let's say we're completely finished. We're all done with our tooth movements, our timeline and staging, everything. We're ready to export these. It's a pretty easy process. So this button right here, Export Setups. So I'm going to click that, and it will automatically select all of our sub-setups to export as printable models. One thing that is really awesome that you can do are you can actually add ID tags. This is a pretty handy tool, and you can actually add ID tags by defaulting to certain criteria. So you obviously can put in the patient's name, the date, the time, but the nice thing is you can put in sub-setups in their titles and their or with or without leading zeros. You can also change exactly where you want this to be placed. So either on the base, which is going to be underneath, or on the side. which clearly is on the side. So this can be really useful for just kind of keeping everything, keeping all your models like organized, so you know where they need to be, what sub setup you're on. You can also use these arrow keys to move them around as well. You can change the font. You can change the tag depth so a negative number is going to be engraved and a positive number is going to be embossed. Once you're finished, you can select your export path by browsing to wherever on your PC you want them to save, and then you will click export. It will take a while to export all these, especially if you've got like, a bunch of sub setups, just because it has to convert everything and then actually export it to your PC. However, to access those, you would just open that file, and then all of those STLs will be present and ready to print. But that's the majority of the software. There are some more advanced features that maybe we'll cover in a later webinar, such as the DICOM importing, and maybe some more staging and timeline setups. But that's the majority of it. I'd love for you guys to all consider adding clear aligners to your offering, because it can radically change your business, your practice, your laboratory, and it allows you to help more people. These are a very in-demand product right now, and there's a lot of people that maybe can't afford braces, or maybe they're in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, even older, and they don't want braces because of how they look. They want something clear that can help revolutionize their smile. This is a really good option for that, and I think this is the Clear Aligner Studio is a really powerful tool that can enable you to do that. So that's all I've got. Should we go over questions, Bernie?
Yes, in fact, thank you for that great presentation. I'm going to suggest to any of you on the webinar that you, if you have any questions, now's the time to write them down so that you can have a live answer from Bryce. And also, while you're doing that, I'm going to remind you that, first of all, this was recorded, and it will be up on the WhipMix website within between 24 and 48 hours, so 1 to 2 days. And you'll be able to find that in the webinar section as soon as you open the home page. And then, of course, you and anyone else who hasn't seen the webinar can watch it and can also obtain CE credit. So to that end, those of you who are on and we have your email addresses, you will be emailed a test, and then all you have to do is fill out the simple test and send it back to us, and we're going to send you a certificate, which you'll then turn in to the NBC for your 1-hour CE credit toward recertification. Okay, any questions at all? I don't see any new ones.
Let's see.
No.
I think there are. I think I can't see them.
We should really drag it down here. You can drag the whole, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
there's some. Okay, let's see. I didn't see those before. If we add this, okay, so Sandra. Hi, Sandra. If we add this to our system, what kind of training would we get? That's a good question. A standalone Clear Aligner Studio training, I believe, is a 1-day training. Let me double check with Chris on that. But I believe that's a 1-day training. That can be remote. I think it's probably easiest to do it remote, honestly. I don't know if that needs to be in person, but Sandra, obviously you're local. So yeah, well, that's definitely something that we would probably talk to Chris about, or Margaret. Let's see. Yeah, how much time would it take to print these aligners on these Sigamax? So, okay, yeah, that's a really good question that probably needs clarification. So what you want to actually be 3D printing on these Sigamax is the models. We don't yet have, and nobody at this point really has, a clear aligner resin to print the actual clear liner. Reason being, A, FDA approval. There isn't anything that's FDA approved at this point. But B, also there isn't really a resin that can print these clear enough and thin enough is the big key. Our splint resin is very clear, however, we can't print these thin enough to be strong enough as a clear aligner. Those materials are still being developed. Those haven't hit the market yet. I'm sure, asking that question in probably a couple of years, there's probably going to be half a dozen materials out there to print on the Asica Max. However, that is not out. That is not out yet. That's not something that's available. It will take some time. Sherry.
Interestingly, that is the next question is about FDA approval.
Yeah, is the latest version of the software FDA approved? Yes, it is. Absolutely. Yeah. Who determines the movement of the teeth rotation? So I prefer for that to be a conversation between you and your doctor. If you're the doctor, you're the man, you're the guy, you're the person doing it, or woman, obviously. That's all you. However, if you're a laboratory, I do recommend talking to your doctor about that. One thing that I will mention is if you're familiar with Implant Studio, you're already familiar with the fact that if you're a laboratory, you actually have to send that plan to your doctor for them to sign off on. They are going to be implementing that in the next version of software in the Clear Aligner Studio. So if you're a laboratory, all of those tooth movements will have to be signed off on by your doctor. I do think that's a good addition, a good idea for them to add in, simply because as technicians, we aren't doctors. Even if sometimes we like to think of ourselves as doctors, we are not. Doctors that are doing this kind of work for their patients have a lot more knowledge on this than we do. So it's probably best if they actually sign off on this kind of treatment planning. Do you have the cone beam scan for this setup? Not this one in particular. Maybe Bernie and I will talk about this. Maybe if we could do another webinar where we do have a case with a DICOM file.
Sure.
That we can kind of show clear aligners integrated with DICOM files.
And advanced controls. And all
advanced
that
controls,
stuff.
etc.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure, we'll book another one.
Regarding the stripping, how will the doctor know how much to trim off? Again, that's a conversation that you want to have with your doctor prior to the planning. What is the cost of the Clear Aligner Studio? That's a good question. Actually, I don't know because I don't actually sell the software. I simply support it. So that's something that we can talk to Chris about.
Yeah, so either have them email you or and then you can get back to them with an answer.
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me. You can email Chris Fry. For those of you that would like it or would like to ask me about it, you can email me. My email address is it's just my initial. It's bhiller at whitmix.com. You can also get in touch with Chris Fry, which is CFRYE at whitmix.com. He can actually get you a quote on it. What is the recommended charge for a clear aligner? It's a really hard question for a couple of reasons. The biggest being your market. Markets are different. Something that costs a certain amount of money in LA is going to be very different than the cost of something in Kansas. The other reason it's hard to say is because it totally depends on how many teeth you're moving. That's a huge one. Your social 6 are obviously going to cost a lot less than 8 teeth or not, or however many teeth. The fewer the teeth you're moving, the less it's going to cost. So it's hard for me to give you a number on that. I kind of showed you what Invisalign costs. I think doing it this way, I think we can offer patients a more cost-effective solution. I will say that. Let's see here. I think that's it. Any more questions? Going once, going twice.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the webinar. And of course, as I said, we'll be sending you we'll contacting you with some information within the next 24 hours or 48 hours. And we thank you and hope to see you at a future WhipMix webinar. Thank you.